Hello, it's Rick Miracle again with another video in a series called Freemasonry and Satanism. The further along I go with these series of Freemasonry and Satanism, and the more that I'm aware of current videos on YouTube and the internet, and articles published, and the actions of the press releases, and world affairs, and Ebola plagues, and threats of nuclear war, and further 911 disclosure, alien disclosure, UFO disclosure, and the Gnostic religion discussions, and even the Pope, the Vatican, seemingly having a prayer ritual lately, look this up on the internet, where they are declaring Lucifer to be God, to be the father of Jesus, the Christ, believe it or not. So there certainly seems to be something strange going on in the background of reality, and a lot of people out there don't want to pay attention, don't want to talk about it, don't want to know about it, and will even get angry with you if you try to discuss it. So anyways, today's book, Nikola Tesla, Lightning in His Hand, The Life of Nikola Tesla, by Inez Hunt, I-N-E-Z, and Juanita Draper. And it's going to be an interesting video because there's a point of view, a perspective about Nikola Tesla that I think a lot of people are not aware of, which seemingly seems to tie in with psychic research, telepathy, interdimensional information, the things that are going on today. Aliens abducting people, Hitler in my previous video abducting a gypsy young man in Munich, laying him on a slab and having a satanic ritual where they sacrifice him to bring forth an entity, an emanation, to impregnate a young girl. This is in Rabbi Marvin Antelman's book, To Eliminate the Opaque, Volume 2, I believe. Anyways, the apparition appeared when they sacrificed the young gypsy man in Munich, Germany. Hitler said in his diary, but it failed to impregnate the young woman of the cult to bring forth a master race, a superior race of humans. And it was also said in the diary that they really would like to dispose of the humans on the earth at this time because they are inferior beings. So my question is, what creatures, what entities would think that humans are inferior beings on the planet and need to be erased and bring forth a master race, a superior race? What does that have to do with Nikola Tesla? Well, I'll get to the book right now and we'll see if we can determine what the tie-in is. So as you know, I put my little tabs on there, marking the places that I thought were relevant to our discussion, to what I thought was important. So let's just see how it starts out here. You know, I always say that, a lot of people don't know what to believe, and that's why I read from books. At least we have something concrete. Where did Rick Miracle get this information from? What should I believe? Should you believe me reviewing 100 or 200 books, reading from the books and using my brain, my contemplative brain? After all that reading, if I come to some common sense conclusions that I believe, and you may come to different conclusions, but I think investigating enough, we will all come to the truth, the final conclusion. That's the goal of my videos. Alright, here we go. The world was dark at the stroke of midnight. In the village of Simulgine, Smiljan, when Nikola Tesla was born January 9th, 1856. Actually, it was a matter of question whether it could have been July 10th, for it was at that faint breath of time between one day and the next which belongs to neither. So he was truly born at the stroke of midnight. That's interesting. The household of the Reverend Tesla, I guess that was his father's name, eagerly awaited the birth of the fourth child. The Tesla heritage was solid, with a background of scholarship, military honors, clerical dedication, and manual dexterity. Through the years, the members of one branch of the family adopted the nickname of Tesla. The term used as an adze-like tool, the name also denoted a family characteristics of a protruding front tooth of that shape. Alright, moving on to page 17. I'm just reading spotty paragraphs in this book, so we're going to go fast. It was from this remarkable woman that the Tesla children received their important early impressions. That would be the mother here. Although Nikola Tesla's birthplace was in Lika, Croatia, and Croatia's been in the news with the warring going on and the genocide, which is interesting. Again, all this stuff ties together. The family was of Serbian origin, again tying into the area of the Ukraine, Russia, Poland, Germany, Austria. In this year of 1856, Smiljan was governed by the Austria-Hungary. It is now, in 1963, a part of Yugoslavia. Although Croatia was predominantly Roman Catholic, the Reverend Milutin Tesla was a priest of the Serbian Orthodox faith, and he conducted services in the little village of Smiljan, a community of about 40 families. There is a legend that Nikola Tesla was born during a dazzling lightning storm. How apropos is that? And that the midwife predicted that he would be a child of storm. The story credits the mother with evading the connotation, preferring to predict that her son would be a child of light. A child of light. Who else is the light being? That would be Lucifer. This is going to tie in. The father added his own interpretation. He was certain that his son would spread the light of the gospel. Well, I guess there's two lights of the gospel. There's one of the 10 Commandments, Moses and Jesus, and then there's the gospel of Lucifer, of the anti-10 Commandments, do as thou wilt, and there is no sin. That's the Gnostic pagan religion that's being propagated around the world right now. And even recently, I watched a video at the Vatican, somebody sent me, and apparently they were doing a prayer acknowledging Lucifer as God and the father of Jesus. It's a scary world here. October 11th, Saturday, 2014. Some crazy things are going on. So let's move back on to Nikola Tesla's book here. Page 18. It was the brook near his home which inspired him to attempt one of his first inventions. At the age of 4, with the help of his brother Dane, he improvised a water wheel from a crude disc. He was firm in his directions to Dane as to the way he wanted it done. Then he constructed an axle from a twig and felt his first thrill of achievement, when the disc turned in the stream. Most water wheels had paddles, but this crude paddleless wheel remained in his mind and became the underlying principle many years later for his invention of his smooth disc turbine without buckets. Age 4. Until the age of 8, he considered his character to be weak and vacillating, and he felt he had neither courage nor strength to form a firm resolve. 8 years old having those concerns? That's odd. He suffered fears of pain and death, of darkness, of religious condemnation, of orgs and the spirit of evil, of ghosts and unholy monsters that lurked in the dark. Perhaps it was darkness that was to be his dragon, still to be slain. So his father was a minister and he was afraid of darkness. Seems to be a lot of spiritual related issues here. Alright, page 30. For a time, Tesla smarted under the sting of his own clear conviction, wavered momentarily, then suddenly he became certain that he was right, and his zeal took on the fire of truth. Again his eyes were playing tricks on him, as in his early youth. He had been perplexed and disturbed by his thoughts appearing before him as a vision. So his thoughts were appearing before him as a vision. Can you imagine thinking something and having an apparition appearing in front of you as a vision, like an invention? You can see it in front of you. So now he saw constantly varied solutions to the problem that were perplexing him. The images he saw comprised motors and generators and were to him real and tangible. All his remaining term in Graz, that was the university, were plagued and absorbed with this problem, then at times seemed unsolvable. Not getting my speeches out right. Maybe I need some water. The Reverend Tesla lived only long enough to see the boy graduate from Polytechnic. So his father died when he graduated college. In 1880, Nikola went to Prague and then to Bohemia. Again, tying this together with current affairs and weirdness in our society, like the Bohemian Grove, where Alex Jones snuck into the place during one of the yearly events where all the politicians, CEOs, and leaders of the world go to in California, the Bohemian Grove. And he videoed a satanic ritual where they have a giant fire in a giant owl, and they toss a baby into the fire. And when questioned about that, they said it was an effigy. And of course I say, what does it matter if it was a real child or a doll, an effigy? And then they dress up in long robes, naked, and apparently ship in gay folks. They do not allow women. So I guess sex is a big part, decadent sex is a big part of the satanic rituals of tossing children into fire under a burning owl called the god of Moloch. Hey, it says Bohemia in this book here where he was at, and all this stuff ties together. Alright, moving on. Page 32. Tesla. He could remember as a boy discerning objects at a distance when no others could see them. And he recalled hearing faint cracklings, sounds of fire in a neighbor's home when the residents had not even been disturbed in their sleep. So it seems to me he had a slight out-of-body experience while he was conscious. So he could see what was around him nearby and see things at a distance. During this illness in Budapest, he could hear the ticking of a watch with 3 rooms between him and the timepiece. He said that a fly lighting on a table would cause a dull thud in his ear. A carriage passing at a distance of a few miles fairly shook his body. The whistle of a locomotive 20 or 30 miles distance caused vibrations of the furniture so strong that the pain to him was unbearable. So plainly he had a sixth sense. So what's this have to do with his inventions? In the days of convalescence, Tesla was ill a lot of his life. He had to summon all of his willpower to pass under a bridge or other structure because of a feeling of crushing pressure. He became tortured with a radar sensitivity similar to that of bats, which made him conscious of objects 12 feet away in total darkness. These psychic manifestations were accompanied by physical stress. His pulse sometimes reached 260 beats a minute, and the tissues of his body caused an agony of twitching and tremors. Page 65, couple of pictures here. Nikola Tesla, electric discharge. Effect of electric discharge from the earth by a Tesla coil, photographed by its own light. So he photographed it at night, and a Tesla coil causes the discharge. There he is with a lot of electrical discharge in a transmitter room. So there's just a few strange things about Nikola Tesla. This is one of the transmitters he made, that he said he could cause the earth to shake and split apart. It's important to understand that the technology that this man was responsible for is part of the weaponry systems now of the United States and the world, and the secret powers have. That's why it's important to delve into this man's history and wonder who he was and where he got the information from. What kind of guy was he? And was it of this world? That's my point. Was it of another world? Okay, so here's Nikola Tesla. Tesla was always closely identified himself with his mother. The two seemed to have a strange telepathic relationship. There we go again. Was Tesla the genius, or was it entities, or from the other side, or was he a reincarnated entity, or was it demonic possession? As I've noticed in a lot of the material that I've read about other people who are inventors and highly intelligent, or credited with inventing things or discovering things. Many of them, like Edgar Casey, had telepathic or seeing ghosts, or could put their head on a book and memorize it in the morning by just sleeping on it. So there's more than meets the eye to a lot of these people. And actually, I'd have to say to almost all of the people that are credited with these qualities, from Newton, Einstein, all of these people, Michelangelo, had a history of psychic or telecommunications, telepathic, dreams. So again, I ask, you put this in the context of the questions today in the Bible, and the Gnostic religion, and the pagan religion, and even the Pope recently declaring that Lucifer was really God. and the UFO aliens abducting people, trying to impregnate them. The same thing that Hitler was doing. And the Bohemian Grove, where they're throwing children in a burning fire. Satanic rituals being exposed worldwide going on. So I'm just trying to say, in this interdimensional world, the material earth and the spiritual other world, how does that play in with Nikola Tesla? And all these books that I have reviewed are all circling around the same target. What is reality? And should we be concerned? He felt a premonition to which he seemed to know that his mother was dying. A telegram came shortly after this and confirmed his fears. Taking a train to Gospic, that's the name of the town, he reached there only a few hours before her death. The shock of the loss of the only one who had really been close to him, compounded with the physical strain of his lecture tour and his inability to sleep, brought on a serious illness which delayed his return to the United States until August. So like I say, there's just a lot besides Nikola Tesla's inventions, and is credited with inventing wireless transmissions that everybody uses today, in wireless and TV and satellite communications and weaponry. Anyways, apparently he did business with Westinghouse Electric and Manufacturing Company. And these constant battles were fought with bitterness, collusion, and chicanery, and it is doubtful if either side missed a trick. The anecdote of the day was that there was one court session. A document held by Westinghouse attorney was turned over by a gullible judge to one of Edison's attorneys. So Edison and Westinghouse were at odds with each other and vying for Tesla's ability to help them. Such was the state of the battle of the currents when Tesla returned to the United States. So a lot of big money people back then were wanting Tesla's abilities, inventions, knowledge for their own advantage. Page 87. The two went on to a discussion of psychic phenomenon. This would be Tesla and a friend of his. Page 87. And telepathy, which the leading exponents of the day believed to be a sort of psychical electricity. Tesla considered the relationship pure coincidence, although he confessed to be amazed at the workings of the mind. Brisbane questioned him as to the theory that there were a mere half-dozen fundamental laws governing the universe. Tesla counted, I think they could all be reduced to one. So I guess Tesla said that the whole universe is basically governed by one rule if you really reduce them. Page 94. Tesla. He spoke of electricity as a poet might speak, repeating his thesis that the scientist is also an artist. His whole life had been a quest for the mysteries of electricity, and on this occasion he expressed his belief that this force was tied up with the mystery of life and perhaps even the explanation of creative force. A lot of people say that the reality we all live in right now is nothing but a hologram. A seemingly strong hologram that seems so real. Anyways, we know that light, heat, electrical, and magnetic actions are closely related, not to say identical. The chemist professes that the combination and separations of bodies he observes are due to electrical forces, and the physician and psychologist will tell you that life's progress is electrical. Thus, electrical science has gained a universal meaning, and with right, this age can claim the name, the age of electricity. In a former lecture, he had concluded with the words, "I think I know what electricity is." But on this night, he stated boldly, "I wish much to tell you on this occasion. I may say I actually burn for desire of telling you what electricity is. But I have strong reasons which my co-workers will appreciate. I shall not dwell on this purely scientific aspect of electricity." Moving on to page 99. Moving right through this book. With a graphic demonstration at Madison Square Gardens, the public was entertained and intrigued and could grasp a part of the potential uses of a mind-powered machine. But they were still skeptical. They were inclined to believe that his machine would prove impractical. The idea of a kind of warfare which might be let loose with such thinking was unbelievable, unthinkable, and they preferred to hide their heads in the sand. With each of Tesla's announcements during that week, they tittered nervously, afraid to believe and afraid to doubt. Although Tesla continued to stress the preventive aspects of his inventions in warfare, the world was, as usual, war-minded and unable to envision a time without conflict. Amen. Seems like they've used Tesla's inventions and knowledge for all kinds of warfare and mind control. Gosh, if people just paid attention to the radio, the press releases in the newspapers, and the TV, they would see that they're being mind controlled. There seems to be an unlimited, and I say that again, unlimited amount of pre-911 mind control propagations on the TV and other media about 911 before it happened. For example, the Illuminati has a card game with all the cards depicting 911 and other world events to come in the future. What kind of psychic or futuristic, telepathic, clairvoyant, satanic reality is out there? That's why we do these book reviews called Freemasonry and Satanism. Because I'm supposing that the Freemasons, i.e. a lot of the cults and lodges under many names around the world, Rosicrucian, York Rite, Scottish Rite, people in Hollywood, Bohemian, Trilateral Commissions, Council of Foreign Relations, the Christian Catholic Church, the Pope, the Vatican, the Zionists, and many other groups with all their occultic and Kabbalah knowledge. I'm just saying, what do they know that the rest of the world doesn't know? That they keep secret under threat of death, and are using it to control and to steal from the rest of the people in the world and to manipulate us. Hence, Freemasonry and Satanism. Like I said before, I could easily have named this series of videos Freemasonry, Illuminati, Zionism, Satanism, puppets in Congress and House of Representatives and the presidents and the leaders of the world. None of these people seem to be representing we the people. We the people seem to be victims for these people and their secret occultic activities. And Tesla's material in this book seems to connect some of the dots. It says right here, the idea that the kind of warfare which might be let loose with such thinking was unbelievable, unthinkable, and they preferred to hide their heads in the sand. See, the big argument today about 911 was, there's the government point of view that some guys came out of a cave with box cutters and took over jets and helped take down the Twin Towers and Building 7 that wasn't hit by a plane or anything. A whole steel concrete structure just decided to turn invisible on its own and drop. That's theory number one by the government. Number two is the conspiracy theorists that the planes were holographic images that people prove, and that thermite nuclear detonations were caused, and an inside job for the powers that be to start World War III, the takeover of the Middle East and the rest of the activities. And the third component is one that matches some of the Tesla technology and UFOlogy, aliens, and black op projects of the government. Secret weapons. They said maybe like a particle beam weapon from a satellite in space disintegrated the buildings. And if you watch Building 7 fall, it's pretty clear. It's the cement, the building, the girders, the steel just melt away. Just disappear. There was no debris on the ground when the thing was over. With nothing but dust and a little bit of metal. Something turned it invisible. Something erased it. Tesla technology? Judy Wood, go look her up. She got a website too. She wrote a book. And she seems to believe that she proved that they used free energy, some kind of super weapon, to take down the Twin Towers. And like it says here in this book, the idea of the kind of warfare that might be let loose with such thinking was unbelievable, unthinkable, and they preferred to hide their heads in the sand. This is what we got today. And if we do have this World War III, which I believe is already going on, but if it comes to a head and the United States gets crushed, it's only because people believe it's unbelievable, unthinkable, and prefer to hide their heads in the sand. Tesla continued to stress the positive aspects of his inventions in warfare. The world was, as usual, war-minded, unable to envision a time without conflict. There were others, some, however, who grasped the scope of the Tesla mind. One reader of the Electrical Review wrote the editor concerning the inventor, "He has simply gone after tarpon when others have been content with sprats." Tarpon's a big fish, and I guess a sprat is a little fish. But Tesla's impossible plans did not end here. As a further extension of his torpedo boat, controlled by the human mind, he was working towards an automaton which would have a mind of its own, that is, one which would be able to operate independently of human will and to operate as if it had intelligence. He startled the public with such statements and added that his automaton will be able to follow a course laid out and to obey orders given far in advance. It will be capable of distinguishing between what it ought and what it ought not to do, and of making sorry about that. Some days I have more trouble speaking than others. And what it ought not to do, and of making experiences, or otherwise stated, of recording impressions which will definitely affect its subsequent actions. In fact, I have already conceived such a plan. And after Tesla died, the secret departments of the U.S. government confiscated all his records, refused to release any of it to the public. Why? This ought to be concerning. We have a government right now, CIA, NSA, TSA, and all the other alphabets you can imagine, all over the world, who creating groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS and Hamas to cause friction and division. We have a government of the world that seems to be operating behind the scenes and continuing to fool, deceive, and dupe the people of the world. And the people of the world, as it says in this book, unbelievable, unthinkable, and they prefer to hide their heads in the sand. I could sit here for an hour and read that over and over and over, and I just think people still wouldn't get it. I could do these book reviews for 10 years and prove it all, and I just wonder if people are human and awake. They just don't get it. But we keep trying. Maybe the people will wake up and we can save our planet. According to A.L. Benson, a reporter, Tesla ordered for his Houston Street laboratory a steel link 2 feet long and 2 inches thick of the best quality steel, strong enough to bear the weight of 100 tons. To this he fastened a small electric vibrator. As the writer described, the vibrator was no longer than an alarm clock. So he has a 2 foot long steel beam and a small electric vibrator. And I'm sure about what I'm about to tell you right now. The powers that be don't want you to know this. And it's probably one of the technologies that took down the towers, Twin Towers. The vibrator was no longer than an alarm clock on a 2 foot beam. As constructed, that frequency of vibrations could be altered at will. So you could adjust the vibrations of the alarm clock. Or different vibrations. Faster, slower. So you could just tune it just right, the vibrations. You know how an electric alarm clock goes. So if you attached it to a 2 foot beam and you tuned it to the exact frequency that resonated with the beam, the wavelength is the same wavelength as the beam. What do you suppose would happen? So constructed that frequency of vibrations could be altered at will. He set the vibrator to tune with the link. For a long time, nothing happened. Vibrations of link and machine did not change to coincide, but at last they did, and the great steel link began to tremble. Increased its trembling until it dilated and contracted like a beating heart and finally broke. A 2 foot beam now. Put an alarm clock on it with the exact frequency that resonated in the beam, and the beam broke in half, enough to hold up tons of material, 2 inches thick. Sledgehammers could not have done it, crowbars could not have done it, but a fuselage of taps, no one of which could have harmed a baby, did it. So you could have given that little alarm clock to a baby to hold and turned it on, it wouldn't have hurt the baby. But it made a 2 inch thick, 2 foot long steel beam break in half. The power of vibrations of all the molecules and atoms. Tesla was pleased. He had learned something. He wanted to learn more. He put his little vibrator in his coat pocket and went out to hunt a half-erected steel building. Down in the Wall Street district, he found one. 10 stories of steel framework without a brick or stone laid upon it. He clamped his vibrator to one of the beams and fused it with the adjustment until he got it. Tesla said finally, the structure began to creak and weave, and the steel workers came to the ground panic-stricken believing that there had been an earthquake. Police were called out. Tesla put the vibrator in his pocket and went away. 10 minutes more and he could have laid the building in the street. And with the same vibrator, he could have dropped the Brooklyn Bridge in the East River in less than an hour. Now that is some technology. And I'm sure, this is 100 years ago, Tesla talked about this, that the powers that be, the Black Op projects, the people in charge, the Freemasonic lodges, the Rosicrucians, the Yorkites, Scottish Rite, Zionists over there, the Illuminati, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Morgans and Schiffs, and all these people running the banksters, CIA, Secret Services, they know all about these technologies. They're using these technologies. They have the technology to take down Twin Towers and Building 7. And when they went to clean up the mess, there was nothing there but a small pile you could walk flatly over. All of it was pulverized, disappeared, annihilated. This was a shocking enough revelation of the powers of vibration, but the inventors startled Benson still further by insisting that he could split the earth in the same way. Split it as a boy would split an apple. Forever. End the career of man. Tesla explained it clearly by saying, the vibrations of the earth have a periodicity of approximately 1 hour and 49 minutes. So if you had an electric alarm clock that would just hit the earth, boom, every 1 hour and 49 minutes, the energy buildup would build up and build up and build up until volcanic and earthquake energies would start being released all over the planet. I'm reminded of the little kid sitting in the back of the car saying to Mommy, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" And as anybody who gets pestered just a little bit too long, finally they crack and turn around and say, "Shut up. We'll be there soon." It's enough energy, enough pressure, enough push. It's like the human person can crack. So can the earth with enough pressure, enough push, enough consistency. Boom, boom, boom. Eventually the energy builds and the whole thing can vibrate into annihilation. Remember that. Are we there yet? That is to say, if I could strike the earth this instant, a wave of contraction goes through it that will come back in 1 hour and 49 minutes in the form of expansion. So if you do smack the world hard enough, it's a gigantic sledgehammer or a big speaker, and you just boom, put a vibration into the earth. And if you're a doctor with the stethoscope, you know, when you can hear the heartbeat, and you put it to the earth 1 hour and 49 minutes later, you would hear the vibration come back. So that's how you could tell what this synchronicity, the right timing would be. So probably Tesla, when he did it to the steel building, just put his ear to the building, wrapped it with a hammer, boing, boing. It would come back and he could time it with a watch. And if he built a device, or even took the hammer manually and struck it exactly at that time by the watch, every 42 seconds, whatever the synchronicity rate would be, he could take down a steel building. A cement column under a bridge. What else? Beaming a laser beam, pulsing it at a plane at the right rate. Would the plane start to vibrate and shake apart if you had the right frequency? Light waves. How far does this go? Now suppose that the precise moment when it begins to contract, explode a ton of dynamite. That accelerates the contraction, and then in 1 hour and 49 minutes, there comes an equally acceleration wave of expansion. Suppose this performance is to be repeated time after time. Is there any doubt as to what would happen? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? There is no doubt in my mind the earth would be split in two. For the first time in man's history, he has the knowledge with which he may interfere with cosmic process. Concerning? Well, there's a system, or I should say numerous systems all over the world that have been built based on Tesla technology. These are transmitters. They pulse different frequencies of vibration. Did HAARP beam massive radio waves into the ionosphere and bounce it back, causing the China earthquake? We know what Tesla said he could do just with an alarm clock or a hammer or something. And the powers that be have built these HAARP systems all over the world. We truly have. They talk about Saddam Hussein, weapons of mass destruction. Saddam Hussein had nothing on the powers of the CIA and the US government and the Pentagon and the rest of the powers of the world, or I should say the powers that rule the powers of the world. Some people notice some of these anomalies in the sky, and you just wonder if turning on these systems on weather fronts can cause these anomalies in the sky. It's pretty easy to how they see it. The same technology that Tesla talked about, transmitting the waves and bouncing them off the ionosphere. ELF, VLF, very long waves and short waves, HAARP, HF transmitter, submarines. It's just weapons of insane destruction. Here's what it looks like when they turn it on. They can bounce these anywhere they want to in the world. The question is, can they? And the answer to that is, yes, they can. And they have the systems, and we just discussed the science on how it works. So if you turn on that transmitter, like an FM station, let's say 101, you're listening to the radio, and instead of the song just going along smoothly, if they pulsed it, and you got a blast every 2 seconds of just a piece of the song, and then a long space of nothing, and then boom, and then some more song. They pulsed it instead of a continuous FM station transmission. And if they pulsed it and they bounced it off the ionosphere and it was steerable, which it is, and they hit the ground, say in China, boom, and they knew the right frequency, boom, boom, the earth would start to shake and have an earthquake. They have these transmitters portable like that, and they also have them on ships. This one's on wheels. This one's on a ship. It's right out of a James Bond movie. Apparently they can affect the weather. There's technologies that's on the internet that they monitor when they turn HAARP on. Like I said, there's a half a dozen or more. And apparently they cause ripples, and if you look out in the sky, spraying powder in your sky, you'll see these ripples. I suspect that has something to do with the wavelength of the frequency. Could it cause the strangeness in the sky that people see sometimes? That's just too bizarre to believe? And the chemicals dumped in the sky are made out of heavy metals and other chemicals that cause these colorations. That's sky spraying, dumped by jets. I took some pictures of this here in North Carolina in the mountains. Apparently these transmitters cause vortex in the clouds or the material dumped in sky spraying. You can look these up on HAARP, H-A-R-P, images on the internet for yourself. So anyways, it's a full-scale, broad-scale weaponry system. HAARP systems and chemtrails in Sweden. See, they got the transmitters and the powder dumped in the sky and the whole thing. It's right out of an insanity. Again, there's a floating system. Looks like a tugboat's pulling it. When they turn it on, the HAARP system, current, long wave, frequency, magnitude readings, they can tell where they're aiming the HAARP system. And interestingly enough, when I took this picture, HAARP status network, right here on the other side in the center of the screen, it says Discover Alaya. The benefits of Alaya. See the star on the David on that flag? Right here. So we've got a biblical thing going on too, that all over the world they're telling all the Jewish people to return to Israel. That's what Alaya is. So why would they be getting Jews from all over the world to return to Israel? And why would they be turning on HAARP systems like on the center of the United States at a time when they had all kinds of crazy, insane weather? Here are the HAARP systems strategically placed all over the world. UK, Russia, Norway, China, India, Australia, Brazil, Peru, Puerto Rico, Long Island, Area 51 out there with the UFOs, and Alaska. So they turn these on and they can cause these hot spots, and if they pulse them, they can cause vibrations. They say it's protection, communication, research, surveillance. What about Fukushima? Could they have caused Fukushima? And also, like it says, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Can they turn on a system like this and pulse us with an invisible frequency that would irritate us? That would cause people to get irritated. Let's say they want to cause a riot in St. Louis, Chicago. And, you know, they had some young kid killed or something. And the people were agitated. And then they turned on some frequency that further enhanced the ugly mood of the human mind. Can they do that with the mind control? From my research and my videos, yes they can. And yes they have. And yes they are. Reminded of the Boston bombing. Fairly well proven to be a false flag, something to help convince people that they need to create laws to take people's guns. Sandy Hook school shooting. They got the guy in the background sitting in a chair doing the devil sign. Or the TV announcer holding up an owl of Moloch. They pre-ordered all the Christmas trees to memoriate the place. How did they do that? Why did they do that? HAARP systems. Tesla technology. And Tesla was clearly connected to the other side with images, apparitions, telepathic communication. So I'm wondering what demonic beings on the other side, what was the motive of them bringing these technologies to Earth? High Frequency Active Aurora Research Project, HARP. You seen any of these in your sky? I have. Would you recognize it if you looked up and you saw this weird hole in the sky spraying powder being dumped, or the powder being formed in ripples like that? I took pictures of this, not this one, but stuff like this here in North Carolina the other day. I looked up at the cloud and I go, what the heck can cause that? Would it be a beam from this? And this? They have them all over the world. There's another one. Optics, shelter and domes, induction magnometer, AZEL telescope dome, image radiometer, classic 30 megahertz radiometer. And you go outside of your skies right now, and please go look. Are they spraying you now? New Mexico, Maine, New York, Florida, North Carolina, California. They say they're doing this offshore of California right now to completely stop the rain. There's some kind of economic destruction going on. Look at that sky spraying. I got this stuff happening in the water here. Can a HARP system cause that in the water? And why would the jets be turning around, going back and forth, dumping stuff in a city like that? Why? Page 102. Nikola Tesla. Written by Inez Hunt and Juanita Draper. Some people read this book and read about the inventions. Other people can read the book and see something a little different. In a few weeks, I could set the Earth's crust into such a state of vibration that it would rise and fall hundreds of feet. Remember, this is 100 years ago. And they took all his diaries and records, the secret black ops people, and they have all the technologies, plus much more. Captured UFO, crashed craft, and even maybe possible communications with the UFO aliens, which I believe is more in line with the interdimensional demonic beings mentioned in the Bible, in the psychic communications, seances, Ouija boards, the same biblical information described in the Bible. Societies that were for thousands of years in the past who had advanced technologies that could build the pyramids and many of the other interesting, far beyond the abilities of man today, technologies, like down in Peru or Lebanon, Belbek. All over the world there are these fantastic. In Ecuador, the gigantic caves. You could park a Boeing 747 in them. Up in the Andes Mountains, going all the way down at a smooth slope down to the ocean, with storage rooms and everything. Why did they build those underground safety areas, is what they look like? What happened back then that hundreds of people, like the Hopi Indians talk about it. Frank Waters' book, the famous book by the Hopi Indians, said that the Hopis were taken underground by some kind of other entities, superior beings, to protect them during the Great Flood or whatever. Throwing rivers out of beds, wrecking buildings, and practically destroying civilization. The principle cannot fail. There may be flaws in this theory. Others may see them, but I don't. Nikola Tesla. Confident that the building was set on solid granite, Tesla allowed the vibrations to build higher and higher. Apparently they fanned out from the laboratory in an unprecedented manner through the sand which underlay the building's foundation. The sand conducted the waves with earthquake intensity. The story is told that the police headquarters on Mulberry Street felt the impact even before the scientists were aware of it in its own laboratory, and that prisoners became terrified of an earthquake. Furniture in the police station danced about the room, and plaster fell from the ceiling. The location of chairs proved disconcertingly uncertain to those seeking a place to sit down. The officers, always apprehensive of the goings-on in Tesla's laboratory, were dispatched to the scene to investigate. So in Tesla's lab, he turned on a pulse device. And blocks away in the police station, everything started bouncing around, scaring the heck out of these folks. When they reached the site, they found Tesla was smashing the machine with a sledgehammer. Turning off the current would not have been sufficient, as the resonance would have continued to mount, perhaps to a disastrous proportion. It is believed that Tesla never gave out the secret of this small motor, but that in the 30s, before the outbreak of the war, when he was lecturing, he declared that he could apply the same principle to the detection of submarines. His system of telegeodynamics, he asserted, could be used to locate ore deposits. And as I say now, with the satellites in space and all these different technologies of radiation, like an X-ray machine, the powers behind the scenes are governments, the secret CEOs and rich people, Zionists and Illuminati. They have access to these technology. They can find gold and other minerals and coal and everything, and they make themselves richer. And the people, the citizens, are none the wiser and are being taken advantage of. And now, of course, with the USA Georgia Guidestones, where it says they want to reduce the population to 500 million from 6 billion, almost 7 billion, it seems that they have such technologies that they would just as rather see most of the human race disposed of. And they have these technologies. It's an interesting contemplation. It is believed that Tesla never gave out the secret of this small motor, but that in the 30s, before the outbreak of the war, he was lecturing he could apply it to the same principle of detecting submarines. In reviewing the subject, Tesla said that the effects of the telegeodynamic oscillator was so powerful that he could take down the Empire State Building. So I suppose in a very short time. So what technologies did they use to take down the Twin Towers? How can buildings disintegrate? Just imagine it. If you had a small welded steel little contraption in your backyard, just 2 feet by 2 feet by 10 feet tall, how could you have it disintegrate? You could take a sledgehammer, you could take a bulldozer, but you're going to wind up with a bunch of debris. How do you cause it to disintegrate? What kind of powers do the powers that run our world have? And how exposed are we, the people, to their whim if they decide to use it against us? Which apparently they're doing every day if you go outside and look at the sky spraying. He described the small mechanical vibrating device which he would employ as being so small it can be concealed in a pocket. By attaching this device to a part of the building and allowing the resonance to build up from 12 to 13 minutes. So they could have attached these to the Twin Towers. He predicted that the rivets would be loosened and the outer coatings would crumble and the steel structure would collapse. I'm just wondering, the satellite laser beam in space, aimed at the Twin Towers, pulsing. Would that have caused it? Just me asking questions. And reading books. But there are others who insist that the laws of resonance are based on principles that the Israelites unknowingly put into operation, not in 13 minutes, but in 7 days and 7 nights with a ram's horn and a shout. I think that's the story where they blew the vibrations and the walls of the castle came crumbling down. Like vibrations, sound vibrations. Just speak into your own hand and you can feel the vibrations. How far advanced are they in these technologies? And assuming, shouldn't be an assumption, it's pretty much should be assumed as true by now, that whether you want to call it aliens from another planet or another galaxy, or interdimensional biblical spiritual beings coming into this dimension, what do they know? What have they been sharing with our politicians, people, and why have they conspired against the people to keep all this in secret? And what's the end game? Like the U.S. Georgia Guidestones say, if that's an indication, the end game is a lot of we the people are going to be dead. John Jacob Astor had $30,000 he was anxious to invest and was willing to lend it to Tesla at this time. That's page 106. John Jacob Astor. So I am reminded about a previous book that we looked at, Bloodlines of the Illuminati, Fritz Springmeier. Here's the Astor family name in the book. And look at that on the bottom. That's a wolf in sheep's clothing. So the Fabian Society and communism is part of the Astor family shield logo, as you can see that. Page 35 in Fritz Springmeier's book. So these people were the financial supporters behind Tesla, taking all his technologies. So who are the Astors? John Jacob Astor was married to Margaret Armstrong, Blackhouse, Schmierhorn, Windsor, the Waldorf Astor family. It's a family tree here. Warburg, John Jacob. So a lot of the people throughout history, a lot of the names you see John Jacob Astor's wealth continued to skyrocket, one biographer said. In a few years, John Jacob Astor had participated in the opium trade, but in 1818 he publicly quit running opium to China. John Coleman, in his book The Conspiracy's Hierarchy, The Story of the Committee of 300, notes John Jacob Astor made a huge fortune out of the China opium raid. It was the Committee of 300 who would not allow to participate in the fabulously lucrative opium trade. And then you got the Russell family and the Bundy family. So my point to this is when I look at this book here with Tesla, and the further reading here, we got a lot of these people that are the bloodline of the Illuminati who had control of all of Tesla's technologies. Hence my video, Freemasonry and Satanism. Because they're also into the occult. My point is we have to get at the truth here. We have to find out what's going on, what do they know, what can they do, and why would they do it? In the corridor, eager reporters met him with a barrage of questions. They were trying to talk to Tesla. They wanted to know why he came. He was at Pikes Peak. And what he was going to do and when he intended to do it. Tesla answered that he intended to send a wireless message from Pikes Peak to Paris. He was also planning an exhaustive research in regard to unsolved phases of wireless experiments, said that he wished to investigate electrical disturbances at this altitude, Pikes Peak. Moving on, it says here, somehow the conversation had brought in the discussion of Bulwer Lytton's novel, The Coming Race, with its use of the vril power. Oh my God, the virile power. That's what Hitler was into. And the coming race, remember? Even the aliens in the books written, they are abducting people, trying to make a new race of beings. And then they re-abduct the person and show them their baby. And then Hitler was doing that, and the occultists do that, interdimensional beings, to create a super race. There had been an explanation of automa, governed by transmission of circumstances upon the eye. Tesla had ventured to predict that Colorado might well be the location for the first exhibition of virile power, V-R-I-L. Remember, there's a book called The Coming Race by Bulwer Lytton, L-Y-T-T-O-N. I have the book. For those who have not read the book, he explained that the writer had conceived of a virile staff by which the power could be arrested or transmitted. An account of the boat which Tesla had controlled with wireless means at Madison Square Gardens. So 100 years ago, Tesla controlled a little boat at Madison Square Garden with wireless transmissions. Had also been a feature of the evening entertainment. Desiree Stanton closed her report of the dinner with the following words. All who were present at the banquet felt, if it may be stated without bathers, that they had soared towards the emperor for a glimpse of glory that exalted the man in the midst of fire and controlling the power. Half spirit and half bird, all the wonder and a wild desire. Things you didn't know about Tesla. Occasionally, page 110, both men discussed matters that bordered on the occult. Here we go. The occult. The Kabbalah. Albert Pike. Morals and dogma. Zionism. The Talmud. Stuff in the Bible. Jesus casting out demons. All this stuff is connected. Tesla did not dare to speak of such things openly with many people. Remember, his father was a minister. Always he denied taking any stock in mysticism. But here's a guy who saw apparitions in front of his face, like a ghost, of the designs he was supposed to design. I suppose I could be a genius inventor if apparitions showed up in front of my face, showing me what to design. It was a strange world that scoffed at so many mysteries which he could explain. With Dozier, he could let himself go. So I guess he could talk to this guy Dozier. Even though he kept asserting that all mystery and miracles were the result of scientific truth, he was impatient to discover the key. Dozier did not laugh at his idea of talking to Mars, so Tesla thought he could communicate to Mars. Both men were certain that the universe reached far beyond the city limits of Little London, or of this Earth and even the galaxy. So Mr. Tesla was certainly a visionary man who saw more into reality than a lot of people see today that prefer to stick their heads in the sand and be blind and oblivious to the truth and realities going on right now. And as I continue to say, that upsets me immensely. The murder and the mayhem and the chaos going on in the Middle East, the Ukraine and Africa, the Ebola, shipping people here to Houston with the Ebola. What madness or madmen are ruling our world? And what do they know? They took Tesla's diaries and all his records and kept it for themselves in strange vaults, underground cities, coming up with what kind of inventions? HARP systems to destroy the people? Anybody who threatens their power structure? I suppose they could kill anybody with a beam. Alright, moving on to page 120. Stationary waves in the Earth means something more than mere telegraphy without wires of any distance. They will enable us to attain more important specific results impossible otherwise. For instance, by their use, we may produce at will from a sending station an electrical effect in any particular region of the globe. We may determine the relative position or course of a moving object, such as a vessel at sea, the distance traversed by the same, and its speed, and we may send over the earth a wave of electricity traveling at any rate we desire, from the pace of a turtle up to the lightning speed. Page 121. Tesla made another discovery that summer when he considered the cosmic importance, which he considered cosmic importance. Cosmic importance. Alone in his laboratory one night, he became aware of signals coming in a pattern. He became increasingly confident that there were definitely an attempt at interplanetary communication from either Venus or Mars. So he, in his laboratory at night, seemed to be getting some kind of communication that seemed to be of an intelligent, controlled being that he thought was Venus or Mars. I'm just wondering, could it just be an apparition or a ghost or a spirit right there in his laboratory? He admitted to being terrified at that moment of revelation, but was certain that he would find a way to return the signals. He was positive that it was a definite attempt at communication, not of terrestrial origin, nor atmospheric, nor influenced by the aurora borealis, but that it was a message with a distinct 1, 2, 3 pattern, the first ever to have been received. Moving on here, page 134. The Westinghouse Company had all the facilities required at its command, and Tesla felt no hesitancy in calling upon them for assistance. Had he not torn up the contract at the time with Westinghouse, he was in trouble. When Westinghouse was in trouble, he tore up a contract. A contract that might have netted him a fortune. So Westinghouse was in trouble. Tesla had the patent. He tore it up so that they would be okay. Nice guy. There were others to whom he could appeal. At this point in his career, financiers came to him to learn the results of the Colorado experiments. Among the curious were such men as Astor, Morgan, and Ryan, all eager to learn what could be wrung out of the latest Tesla achievements. Just thought I would look up Morgan here in Fritz Springmeier's book. It should be mentioned that some of the prominent Illuminati families also play key roles in the drug trade, such as the Brofmans, Cabots, Shaws, Bacons, Perkins, Morgan, Forbes. Notice these names you've seen in the media and the news are famous names. Oppenheimers. Just wonder what they will do with Tesla's, what they did do with Tesla's technology. And apparently they were all over him back then, according to this book. Astor, Morgan, and Ryan, all eager to learn what could be wrung out of the latest Tesla achievements. Of first magnitude to the inventor was his Colorado success in the transmission of power without wires. With his head still in the clouds, he told the financial magnates of his accomplishments and assured them that he could put power into the earth and command it to do his bidding. He could send heat to the North Pole. Then they talk about global warming and global cooling and climate change, and they have all these transmitters. Do you suppose they could do what Tesla said he could do when they took his diary and his records and absconded with them and kept them from the prying eyes of the public? He could send heat to the North Pole and ice to the tropic, pictures around the world, music through the air, and time the clocks of the universe. The process could be worked out so that it was inexpensive and men could draw electricity unlimited from the earth at will. Well, we have free energy out there, but apparently anybody who tries to patent their inventions or do anything, they get shut down for national security reasons. And if they don't cease and desist, they're likely to be conveniently neutralized, disappeared, killed, hit by a truck. Men's labor would be lessened, peace and prosperity would be assured. Well, it seems like these evil satanic occultists don't want peace and prosperity to be assured. All right, Morgan alone remains somewhat interested in the inventor. Morgan, Chase Bank, Rockefeller, all these powerful people, what do they know? What can they do? What do they control? I could build a tower, said Tesla, and when my system could produce a world broadcasting system that could earn millions for the inventors. Morgan pricked up his ears. Tesla felt no humiliation in asking for money, for he had a firm conviction that all knowledge belonged to mankind. Then why did they steal his records and keep that from mankind? How far advanced could we be right now if they had not done that? And that wealth should be given freely to disseminate this knowledge. He believed in noblesse oblige. As for Morgan, money was not for extending knowledge, but for accruing and compounding interest and extending investments. The House of Morgan was not founded on wild speculation. Interesting material. All right, moving on. In it, Tesla, the problem of increasing human energy. A philosophical treatise by Tesla. Tesla contemplated life, asking, whence does it come? What is it? Whither does it tend? He maintained that the sun is the past, the earth is the present, and the moon is the future. And further declared, the earth will be destroyed not by fire, but by ice. But mankind need not despair. He gave as his reasons for hope his firm conviction. There will still be left on earth a glimmering spark of life, and there will be a chance to kindle a new fire on a distant star. Birth, growth, old age, and death of an individual, family, race, or nation, what is it all but a rhythm? Page 146. Amongst the retarding forces of the world, he took his stand with Buddha. That ignorance is the greatest evil of the world. The evil which he identified with the power of friction working toward destruction. Included in negative forces was war, but Tesla predicted that the flying machine could bring on universal peace. He had lost a bit of his optimism, however, for he said, for all that men will fight on merrily. Page 149. This writer stated that Tesla gave the total impression of knowledge, not divided into chambers, but an entire crystal sonic of intellectual ability, but that when Tesla spoke, one could see mankind rise as a titan and look into the future when the human race was no longer forced to labor, and could see a day when rich and poor no longer meant differences of material condition, but of spiritual capacity and ambition. A time when intercommunication all over the earth should be immediate and universal, and even when knowledge should be derived from sources now hardly imagined. So knowledge can be derived from sources not hardly imagined. Well, we know a little bit about crashed UFO craft, and them re-engineering the science that they discovered. The Morgan reply, this was the Morgan financier, was not long in coming and stated in no uncertain terms that they had a contract and that he, Morgan, had fulfilled his part but did not consider it unreasonable to expect Tesla to carry out his part. So they were arguing about money. Tesla wanted to invent, and they wanted to derive benefit and financial success from his inventions, and he died a poor guy in a motel room. No one felt the ohms of the clouds of war was gathering in Europe in 1914, more than did Tesla. He sensed that it would be his own countrymen, the Serbs, who would be the first pawns in the devastating game, and commented, "Civilization alone is evidently insufficient for ensuring peace on earth." He predicted that this war, which had not yet touched America, would be a vast terrestrial upheaval, as if gigantic forces were unchained, threatening the entire globe. Well, it certainly seems like we have gigantic forces unchained here in 2014. This is 1914. 100 years later, prior to World War I, we seem to be, I can felt the omen of clouds of war gathering over Europe. Seems to me like the clouds of war are gathering all over the world right now. The very intelligence and resourcefulness of the Germans was a threat. They were fully capable of making 2 blades of grass grow where one had grown before. The responsibility for the calamity Tesla placed at the door of modern science. But he was convinced that science could also be the Frankenstein monster which it had created. Science could also undo, the Frankenstein monster which it had created. So he was getting his information from the other side, apparitions that appeared in front of him. So I just wonder if the interdimensional demonic beings were not feeding this whole thing for some cosmic celestial battle between fallen angels and demonic beings booted out from heaven, as the Bible says. Seems to be more here than meets the eye. However, on November 13, 1915, the electrical world also announced the American inventors as chosen candidates for the honor. So they were going to give somebody an award here. According to a router dispatch from Stockholm, the Nobel Prize for Physics was to be divided between Professor William Henry Bragg of the University of Leeds and his son W.L. Bragg, at Cambridge University, for research in the structure of crystals to be used as a ionotic, some kind of rays, probably like a laser beam. Tesla deprived of the $20,000 in his hour of need because he didn't win the prize. Apparently him and Edison were at odds with each other, and Edison wanted to destroy Tesla. Tesla's involvement with the occult. (182). The nonconformist was damned. As a result, Tesla's idiosyncrasies branded him as a mystic, charlatan, and crackpot. There were those who went so far as to maintain that he was a prophet whose origin was on another planet. Whatever the speculations, he remained an enigma. So Tesla was an enigma. His most productive years chanced to coincide with an era of yellow journalism, industrial greed, and unlicensed piracy. Seems to be going on that way right now. The naive and gullible public watched the growth of fabulous fortunes ready to be gambled on any scheme for gain. Even as a child, Tesla's intense imagination have given a clue to his latent creativity and to his differences from those around him. The visions which appeared before him continually became an affliction. The visions which appeared before him continually became an affliction. These hallucinations may have been caused by some physical deviation of the optic nerve or by a particular brain structure. Whatever the cause, they were frequent in times of danger and of great exhilaration. Tesla once described the phenomenon. I apologize for my speaking today. I think you're getting the gist of this conversation. There's something more to Tesla than meets the eye. In some instances, I have seen all the air around me filled with tongues of living flame. Their intensity, instead of diminishing, increased with time. This luminous phenomenon still manifests themselves from time to time as when a new idea, opening up possibilities, strikes me. So he can see the air around him as flames when things strike him as ideas. Are some interdimensional beings communicating with him? Telepathically? Alien beings? Demonic beings? Spiritual beings? What? When I closed my eyes, I invariably observed first a background of very dark uniform blue, not unlike the sky on a clear but starless night. In a few seconds, this field becomes animated with an innumerable scintillating flakes of green, arranged in several layers and advancing towards me. Then there appears to the right a beautiful pattern of two systems of parallel and closely spaced lines at right angles to one another in all sorts of colors, with yellow, green, and gold predominating. Immediately thereafter, the lines grow brighter, and the whole thing is thickly sprinkled with dots and twinkling light. This picture moves across the field of vision, and in about 10 seconds vanishes to the left, leaving behind a ground of rather unpleasant and inert gray, which quickly gives way to a bellowing sea of clouds, seemingly trying to mound themselves in living shapes. It is curious that I cannot project a form into this gray until the second phase is relaxed. Every time before falling to sleep, images of persons or objects flirt before my view. When I see them, I know that I am about to lose consciousness. If they are absent and refuse to come, it means a sleepless night. So here's a guy that was born exactly at midnight, over there in the Serbian, Croatia area, coastal Transylvania and the Bohemian area, a lot of places of the magic and mysteries of the past. He never forgot his childish excitement, and he relinquished the hallucinatory soarings with a painful reluctance. So that was one of the things I discovered reading these books about Tesla and other people, is there seems to be a higher level of interdimensional, beyond reality communications between most of these people, these eccentric people. And even Edgar Cayce, you know, he would go into a trance and give cures to people for their illnesses, and then he started doing readings about past lives and future lives. And then the government into remote viewing. And at least not forget all these Zionism and Jewish people, and even movie stars in Hollywood into the satanic and the occult, like the Kabbalah. How many people are really aware of this reality going on? Page 187, he questioned whether the ancient mystics might not have had some actual understanding of a primitive kind of electricity. Tesla believed that Moses was undoubtedly a practical and skilled electrician far in advance of his time. He was certain that the Ark of the Covenant had been constructed, in such a manner that it became a condenser, and that the friction of air against the curtains might have generated electricity that caused the light to appear at night. Therefore it follows that the sons of Aaron who were killed on touching the ark were the victims of high-tension lightning discharge. Tesla was intrigued with the possibility of the scientific explanation of biblical miracles. Further, he made wide use of biblical symbols. The use of such symbols may well have been an obscure foundation in his subliminal conscience indoctrination as a child in an intensely religious family. Could the qualities ascribed to the Holy Ghost of power, energy, flame have been persistent in his retentive mind? And could the symbol of the dove have struck a half-remembered chord? So it isn't just me that sees that there's just a little bit higher level of reality to Tesla. Moving on, what about the principle of the rotating magnetic field and his alternating current motor, page 195? How could he acquire his prophetic grasp of cosmic knowledge as a century in advance? And how does one rationalize the complete disappearance of certain documents, records, and data important to his life story? So the people absconded with his records. How does one account for Tesla's premonition of his mother's death? What was the significance of certain numbers which he respected? And a disciple of the occult explained that Tesla's body was not really inside the casket, and that strange rays emanated from the casket had made photographs blurred, indistinct. So when he died, I guess his body disappeared, and when they took pictures, it blurred the camera film. Odd. The meaning of occult is varied and subject to individual interpretation. Remember, my series is Freemasonry and Satanism. We're talking about the Kabbalah and all the other weird stuff, aliens, UFO, demonic beings, and the Pope recently, the new Jesuit Pope, Francis from Argentina. If you go on the internet, they're doing a prayer saying Lucifer is God and the Father of Jesus. Oh my God, what is going on? And 100 years ago, seems like the similar things were going on. Why did these interdimensional beings bring this knowledge in front of Tesla's face, right in view, so he could see them in the air, what to design? What nefarious purpose that we see in the world today? What game is afoot? Why are they spraying us like we're bugs with chemicals in the sky? You're probably asking, why does Rick ask all these questions? Just go out and have a good time, Rick. Go party. Don't worry about that world ending. That's what the New Agers want you to think. Go downtown. Look at the city, the posters on some of the poles downtown. Just have joy. Experience joy. Time's too short. They don't want you to think. The meaning of occult is varied and subject to individual interpretation. For some it bears the connotation of the supernatural, the spell of witchcraft. It's like our politicians going to the Bohemian Grove. Look it up, that Alex Jones videoed, and presidents and big leaders and CEOs and dressing up in long robes and having a satanic ritual, throwing a baby into a burning fire under a gigantic demonic owl named Moloch, and bringing in gay men to have sex with. Sick? You think? Look it up. Go see Alex Jones' video. The Bohemian Grove. The lore of astrology and the tinge of black magic. This is in the book here. To others, the term simply implies that which is hidden and yet to be discovered. To the later group, all knowledge is occult until the period of discovery. Electricity is a perfect example. So before electricity was common knowledge, I'm sure a lot of people thought it was magic, magnetism, things like that. Today's concept of the universe is unlimited. There are no longer any absolutes. This is the author's writing here, of course. The acceleration of new discoveries has brought about a confusion which thins the hairline between the scientific and the occult. One can only conjecture, was Nikola Tesla a mystic? So that was the point of my whole doing this book here. I read this book years ago, but it wasn't the right time to do this book review. So I'm almost finished here. Tesla told the reporters, "I have been leading a secluded life, one of continuous, concentrated thought and deep meditation. Naturally enough, I have accumulated a great number of ideas. The question is whether my physical powers will be adequate to working them out and giving them to the world." He told the reporters that he had already conceived a means that would make it possible to transmit energy in large amounts, thousands of horsepower from one planet to another, absolutely regardless of distance. Then he continued, "I think nothing can be more important than interplanetary communication. It will certainly come one day, and the certitude that there are other human beings in the universe working, struggling, and suffering like ourselves will produce a magic effect on mankind. The foundation of a universal brotherhood will last as long as humanity itself." Here too, Tesla had demonstrated his first radio-guided weapon. In 1899, en route to Colorado Springs, he had returned in 1917 while engaged in work on mechanical transformers. Accompanying the photographs were to be his models to his guided weapon and replicas for the cascading electrical discharges of his Colorado Springs experimental station. So you got the gist here. There was more to Tesla. Did he foresee 3 decades later a research project known as Skyfire would be engaged in studying the electrical characteristics in the Rocky Mountains and the evaluation of the effects of cloud seeding on a lightning occurrence? Could he have caught a faint glimmer of a military investigation when thousands of volts of electricity would be used to dissipate a shallow artificial fog layer? What of the death ray? I'm going to end this video with this. And what of the death ray? As early as May 19, 1924, the British scientist Grindal Matthews was quoted from a Paris dispatch at the discoverer of a diabolical ray capable of destroying airplanes, and it was announced that he would be coming to Paris on the following day to join the French scientists. A death ray? A disintegrating ray? What powers do they have? Did some Arabs with box cutters make the Twin Towers become invisible and turn into dust? Do they have some kind of abilities to cause death rays? Is there some kind of weapon warfare going on? What is this? On May 21st, Paris again sent out word that Grindal Matthews had knowledge which would make it possible to put a whole army out of action. 1924. And the rays would be used to direct an electrical current. However, scientists deplored the exaggerated accounts of his experiments saying that a 4-mile radius was possible with a maximum of 7 to 8 miles, thus rendering the destruction of the entire fleet impossible. Matthews insisted that the Germans already had such a ray. Could this magic ray have anything to do with Tesla's death, which he was described as being infinitesimally small? In a few billionths of a second, such a brilliant beam is built up that is burst out of the right end of the rod, which has been left more transparent than the other. So what kind of weapon do they have? Could Tesla have known the secret of the ruby light? Or was that the principle which he said was entirely unknown in the field of physics at the time? I think you got the point of this book. The powers that be have more knowledge. They got Tesla's records. The financiers were involved with Tesla, took his records, took his patents. Morgans, Rothschild, Chases. And this was the event that gave them the complete control of the world, and all the citizens shut up, do nothing, and just watch as the Middle East and lots of the world is being controlled, and the United States. What nefarious game is afoot? Well, where did Tesla get all his knowledge? What are those apparitions that appeared in front of his face and in his sleep and in his dreams and the visions come from? And why is the Pope saying Lucifer is now God? Why are aliens, as documented in many books, abducting people and creating hybrid entities, humans versus aliens, which apparently are all over the planet right now? And are they controlling things? Reptilians, Greys, Syrians from the star system, Sirius, Palladians. What does it all have to do? It's all one reality, as Tesla would say. There may be many laws, but they all get reduced to one. And as I say, there are many things going on. 9/11, World War I, World War II, revolutions, and there are powers, the banksters, who've been ruling the planet for a long time. Whoop, I got it upside down again. Bloodlines of the Illuminati. Go online and try to find this book. It's pretty cool. Go find this book. Abe used books or other used book sites. This is just a couple bucks. So Tesla was definitely a little bit on the side of the psychic side, getting his information from the other side. These people are into the occult, getting their information through the Kabbalah and the other side. And it seems that buildings that disappear like magic, even ones not hit by a train like Building 7. Thank you for watching another one of my videos. I hope I've been a little coherent and made some sense, food for thought. And as always, you know, I pray to God that we the people wake up, and pray to God that He does something to stop the seemingly evil forces afoot in our world, with all the Hollywood and other Kabbalah, satanic stuff going on. The Israelites and the Zionist people, which not all Jewish people are bad. Some people have just turned toward Zionism and Lucifer. Like, I guess, the current Pope. A lot of the Christians are going towards the Luciferian campground. Seems like it. But that was prophesied or told to me when I was in grade school and high school, when I used to go to Sunday school. The mark of the beast. You won't be able to buy or sell unless you swear allegiance to Lucifer and take the mark of the beast. All this stuff, as I say, is all connected. The people need to open up their eyes and ears and brain and see it for what it is. So anyways, as I say, you know, pray to God. I do believe we have spiritual power. We are spiritual beings. And we need to recognize the difference between good and evil. And pray for the God of good to control and dominate and eliminate the demonic beings of evil, it seems. Ignorance and apathy is going to get us nowhere. Watching other people be killed and eliminated, genocided, Ebolaized with Ebola, plagues. If we don't do anything, it's going to come back at us. We'll have the plague. We'll be eliminated. Drones will be tracking down people, running through the forest, trying to escape. Is that possible? Anyways, that's my thinking. Thank you for watching my videos. Hope it's been a little entertaining and a little bit informative. A whole lot informative.